So we're going to do a reading from the Patterer. We're going to take about a 15-minute break or whatever. If you want me to sign the book for you, we'll do that. And if you are a writer or a writer wannabe and you want to get up here and do a one-page or so reading, then the improv group can take from there and create a scene based on your writing. That's what we're going to do in the second half of the performance. And let me tell you, I did this with them a few weeks back at the Hideout Theater. It was hilarious. These guys are really, really good. So, are you guys going to do a whole series again this year?
Yeah, we're hoping to do another series again next year, and little one-offs here or there.
Okay.
Things like that.
All right, and I'll let you explain all that. Justin Davis is director. And I'm going to let him explain that part of it because he can do it a heck of a lot better than I can.
Yeah, during the break, there's slips of paper back there with a pen. You can put your names in a hat, and we'll draw a name from a hat.
Yeah.
That writer can get to read their excerpt.
Right. So it's either that or I had some slips over there. So
either one's good.
We'll fill out a slip if you are a writer, if you want to get up here and read something, or if you brought something to read, then we'll draw the names and we'll go from there. Okay? So, with that, let me introduce to you Leeds Merriweather, aka Bobby Post, who is a good acquaintance of mine and a true Brit. And for those of you who don't know, the Patterer is set in 18th century London, so I figured, why should I torture you with my reading of the first chapter from the book? We're going to have Bobby come up here, who is a silver-tongued devil and a wonderful character. He's working on a book of his own. It's called Ventriloquist for Dummies. So with that, let's bring Bobby up here, and he will become Leeds Merriweather for me. Thank you, Bobby.
Good afternoon. So we'll go straight into it. The Patterer, Chapter 1. London, 1765. Blood and lust make the world go round, I say. You may argue that it's money, the pound, the pence, the farthing, the bob, the crown, gold or silver, that makes it spin. God knows money's good. But I'll tell you straight away, I've personally found it quite handy when bartering for a wench or wine, in those rare, exquisite moments of self-indulgence. But if you believe that, you'd be as wrong as tits on the book. Ladies, forgive me. Men, you'd expect it. But I will, for the ladies' sake, attempt to rein in the crudosity of my tale. It won't be easy, with breeches dropping nearly as often as your draw. What I offer is a tawdry tale with bullets flying and death-defying antics. But also a tale of love. Man on woman, man on man, Camelot, oh well, let's not have any of that, shall we? It's mostly a story about oral stimulation. Wait, don't run. No need to even blush. It's not all what you imagine, although your imagination did just have its way with you, didn't it? Cheeky devils. Yes, you're what kind of right. And you've proven my point. Love and lust make the world go round. Repeat it with me. That, in fact, is my world, and offer it for sale to you. Got tuppence halfpenny? Step up even closer and let's have it. You see, I am a Patterer at your service. That's my exceptional skill. It's also my curse, as you will surely see. Now, the first rule of a good Patterer is to begin with the most titillating, scandalous, or horrific story you can find. Flesh it out wherever possible, with references to body fluids. And never, never, never let facts get in the way. Actually, I have a saying, which I made up entirely, original, though you may steal it if you wish. If it bleeds, it bleeds! That's me, Leeds Merriweather. The roar of my name rolled like thunder through the printer's shop. It yanked me rudely from a dreamless sleep, so deep it would have awakened Shakespeare himself. And this just in. Shakespeare is still dead. Lates Merryweather, you lazy son of a twat. The inks are dry and the days are wasting. Charles McNabb owned the dusty print shop where this story begins. He had an exclamation point to his roar with a kick in my ribs. I squinted up at him from the corner of the press room where I'd called up for the night, with a soft pillow and a hard floor. It seemed as if I'd only just closed my eyes before being subjected to the indignity of McNabb's boot. I know for a fact it was nearly dawn when, like a weary tomcat, I padded in and settled down with a snout full of gin and a head full of stories I'd collected from a long night patronising the public houses along Fleet Street. If you're going to sell for me today, I'll be sure to have plenty like you will, McNabb said. He carried a bundle of the day's edition of his broadsheet, the London Tatler Tribune. Oh, go easy if you please, sir, I said, my ribs where McNabb's boot struck 8, but oh, how my head throbbed even more. February had just given way to March, and the lights from the window danced with particles of dust, created a veil of sorts before my eyes. I sniffed. Oil and ink, parchment and stain. The aroma of the printing press, of literature freshly baked, and turpentine. I love the smell of turpentine in the morning. McNabb slapped the back of his hand on the broadsheets. Cannibalism, he cried, adultery and ravishing of maidens. I love the ravishing of maidens, it sells newspapers. The publisher was a short Scot with a gunpowder temperament, and that morning something put a spark to his britches. "'Tis death on the high seas, by God, I'm good," I asked. Good for what? He aimed the next kick at my privates. I raised a knee just in time. "Dinna be insolent, you ragged lump of gutter waste. If this story do not draw income today, then we have no business doing business in this business." I used the brick wall behind me as a brace for my back. I inched up, slowly, very, very slowly, to a standing position. War drums were beating in my noggin, and a battle for a clear head was most definitely in doubt. Too much gin last night, for certain. I took the broadsheet McNabb forced upon me and glanced over the all-important lead story beneath the Tatler Tribune banner. "Spank me senseless. Lord Howe's shipwreck? What the bloody hell is this?" I demanded. "A fine bit of writing if I say so myself." "A fine bit of thievery, I say," that weasel McNabb had attached his name to the story, my story. I was the one who mined the details of the shipwreck over a bottle of rum from a Portuguese captain whose ship happened upon an uncharted island. The crew was taking on fresh water when they discovered what was left of a tourist yacht in the lagoon, and the remains of a rich nobleman, his wife, and others who perished with them. "What's this dung you've printed here? What happened to what I wrote?" I wanted to rip the newspaper and wave the tatters in McNabb's ferret face. I'd only turned the details over to McNabb on the promise that I could print and sell the story under my name. All I had to do was to raise a couple of quid to cover the cost of the printing. All the right elements of a great story were there, not the least of which was potential for profit. McNabb understood that. He held out his palm, and the way he rubbed 2 fingers against his thumb said it all. "Show me the money." I shook my head. "Soon." "And what of yesterday's sales? Did you drink it all the way as usual last night?" "Course not," I lied. I was penniless again. Even McNabb could read that much in my bloodshot eyes. "It's a fine story, lad, and I couldn't let it waste away waiting for you." That bugger McNabb knew a golden story when he saw one. All they found were the bones of the good Lord Thurston and those 6 who were shipwrecked with him. The evidence of an extreme hedonistic life they lived and left behind created a tale so repulsive and so enchanting in one that it was sure to shock and awe and produce profits. More important, this was a story to be told and retold and remembered for generations. And it was mine to tell first. "Lad, it's a sin to give stock to such profound pride. Be prudent," McNabb said. "You're a better man for surrendering it to me, and the story's better for it. It's my duty as an editor. Now run and patter and run, whichever it is you do." He waved me off, dismissing me as one might shoo a cat from the supper table. "Leave the wordsmithing to McNabb," he said. "You have every chance to patter your version on the street. You have a handsome face, a strong voice and straight teeth. You're made to patter, no publish. And this is your proper lot in life, accept it. I looked down at McNabb. He was barely as tall as my shoulder. My left hand clenched, balling up in a collar of the Tatler Tribune I held. I snapped at him. This was mine. You said it was a story beneath you. She rose to the occasion, he said, with a smirk. McNabb handed the broadsheets to me. Do you want them, or shall I find another Patterer today? I moved to the back window and bent at the waist enough to peek at the sky above the roofs of Fleet Street. The clouds were grey, but not dismal. More distressing was the odour of the fish market carried on the wind. Whitefish today, and not a fresh catch. Strong enough to blow down from Billingsgate, the wind would invariably carry my voice away from the crowds I hoped to capture. Bloody hell it was. This would be a difficult day. I turned to face McNabb, took one of the broadsheets from the bundles and waved the page in front of him. Not ready to back down from his duel. You agreed I could rent your press to print my own, he laughed. What? You have no money, you can't afford it, you foul-breathed alley dog. Be intelligent for once. Why should I allow you to compete with me? It would be like letting you shag my wife and offer me my own bed for the purpose. I may be a Scot, but I'm not insane, man. I took a step toward him and then sharply veered to the right to the large typesetting table in the press room. To my left, near the front door, a wall of books, pamphlets and assorted printed pages for sale stood behind the counter where McNabb serviced his customers. Everything for the literate gentleman, from pens to ink to writing paper, and wax seals set on display across the counter itself. At the back of the press room, McNabb's assistants, Simon and Garfield, were preparing sorry. Let's try not to corpse there. We're preparing the printing press for another go, pretending to ignore the battle of wills and the ink-stained egos. Pacing back to McNabb, I considered my limited options. No respect, I say. Someday, I knew I would have my own press and see my words, my ideas in print instead of being cast to the wind as they were now. Even on a calm day, words disappeared with a moment at each street corner where I stopped. No one respects a patterer. Put your story in print, that, my friends, is a whole other kettle of carp. Change would come, of that I was certain. But until then, there were meals to be purchased, rent money to be paid. Both, sadly, have been hard to acquire of late. And dodging my landlord, who selfishly insisted on being paid for overdue rent, had become a daily game. How's your heat this morning? McNabb asked, as if the matter was settled and forgotten. And your rhyme? How are you going to pitch this? My head was right as ever. My rhyme? Far too splendid for the drivel you've written here, I said. Leeds, it's that attitude that makes you so difficult. If I want a bit of criticism, I only have to spend more time with my wife. Show some conviction, man. Be positive in your expression. Be cheerful, even. For no one wants to buy death from a grump. He was right, of course. In pattering, proper disposition is nearly as important as the winning smile and the tale's details. I admitted to McNabb as much and implicated him. So I handed him one copy I'd waved in his face a moment earlier and stepped next to the window. I counted only those papers in my hand. 23 papers, I said. That's a halfpenny short of 12 shillings in total. He shook his head. No, lad, the count's 24. But Mr. McNabb, see for yourself. I handed him the bundle of papers in my hands. In return, took the single broadsheet he was holding. I rolled it cylindrical and tapped it like a baton in the palm of my left hand while McNabb counted the papers. I'm sure I printed out exactly 4/20, he said. He looked at the table in the centre of the room. He looked to his left, to his right, clearly confused. He counted again as if he could perform the Lord's own fish and loaves miracle to increase it by at least one. But the stack in his hand had not changed. Then I pointed my rolled newspaper to the printing press. McNabb's eyes followed the sweeping motion of my paper pointer. Is it possible you left the final print on the press? I asked. He took the bundle of broadsheets from him while he stumped to the press in the back of his shop I unfurled and added the sheet in my hand to the others. No, it's not here. With a shrug, I placed the newspaper in my satchel, where I still had, as yet, 6 unsold copies of the London Gentleman's Magazine, and 3 books I'd purchased at discount from Mr. Hawke, the bookseller 6 doors down. I then slung the satchel in the long leather strap over my head, collected my hat, and turned to the door. Well, I said, if by any chance the missing copy appears, do send it my way. I should have made it 3, maybe 4 stops by then, and will most certainly have reached the West End within 3 hours. I'm certain that with a story so compelling and cleverly written as this, I should be sold out in no time at all. McNabb accepted this as a certain fact and grinned. You do your job and my words will do theirs. And then he demanded payment for the 23 Tatler Tribunes he could account for. I sheepishly shook my head. I cannot go on giving you papers on credit, lad. Why can't you pay the other like the other Patterers? 'Tis no way to run a business. You tell me, you're the Scot. You don't always make it good. I'm the best Patterer you've ever had, Mr. McNabb. No one sells your trash like me. I'm not so certain of that, my boy. On the soul of my sainted mother, I say no more credit. And this is the last time. That's precisely what you said last time, I smiled. I was starting up my day with a 1 paper profit. And with that extra 2pence, I could afford a full meal that evening. It would be my first of the week. With a gulp of the thick London air and a sip of thin potato gin from the flask in my pocket to steady myself, I began my march across the uneven cobblestones towards my first stop, a busy corner at Cheapside. I drew out the sound like a monk's chant to test my vocals. I would need them proper today. The tone sounded strong enough. It carried a depth, timbre, and a bear-like resonance that comes only after a fair night of drinking. Some say London gin will put hair in a chest. I'll say it puts a baritone balls in your voice. At least for me. More than 3 nips, and I sound like God on high himself. With what I can remember of the previous evening's rounds, I was bound to be thrice as strong that day. I'll tell you. I do not fancy the overuse of rhymes in pattering, and as so many of my compatriots do these days. But this was a story so full of twists and characters uncommon in London that it demands just such this fine Merryweather touch. A wretchedly wealthy shipwrecked aristocrat, his wife, his 5 fellow castaways, fellows being the relative description. 2 were lusty females, harlots, it was happy to know, left to fend for themselves on an island. I began shouting more than 20 paces before reaching the corner. Drama on the high seas, cannibalism, lust on the high seas, lusty cannibalism. Come hear me out. I've got the details. A crowd formed around me like the first innocent swell of high tide when I stepped across the Cheapside market. I stepped on a small platform I'd built there and paused. I looked over the faces before me and let tension and their expectations of entertainment build. I held up a copy of the Tatler Tribune and directed their attention to the first masthead, and then the story of Lord Thurston. Step right up, come hear a tale. A tale of a fateful trip. My voice was strong, more passers-by paused to listen. It started on a distant port aboard a tiny ship. I told them of the first mate, the captain who was brave, and sure, they set sail that day for what was to be a 3-hour tour. A 3-hour tour? The woman asked, wide-eyed. Indeed, a 3-hour tour. You're very gracious with your applause. You're most welcome.